Perfect. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Eddie, and thank you everyone for again making making time out of your busy schedule and joining us on another Wednesday webinar. As Eddie alluded to, this one is a little earlier, so we are excited. And the reason for it is because we have a special presenter today. Many of you are familiar with him already, but I'm going to introduce him here shortly. But before I do that, I just wanted to introduce the rest of the panel. As Eddie mentioned before, everyone here is pretty much familiar faces. So and I think you all are pretty much very familiar with everyone's names, I hope. But with that being said, as always, we have Eddie from our marketing department. Eddie's going to be keeping track of the Q&A and the chat. So if anybody has any questions, it is our commitment, as always, that we're going to answer every question before we end the webinar. So again, if during the presentation, you happen to have any questions, feel free to submit those questions on the Q&A or on the chat function, and Eddie will be keeping track. Also, our very own colleague, also from the marketing department, Carrie Lazar, she will also be keeping an eye on the Q&A and the chat. So again, we encourage you to submit your questions, and as always, it's our commitment to answer every single one of them. And with that being said, I think everyone is also familiar with myself. My name is Milton, and I'm the Membership Development Officer here for the United States Senate Federal Credit Union. And today's topic is another exciting one. Actually, I myself am very eager to learn more about 529. I have a little 3-year-old that I really going to be taking some notes and perhaps scheduling a meeting here with Michael very soon. But with that being said, today's presenter, we have our very own, our partner from Fellows Financial Group. We have Michael Schimmel, who will be leading the presentation. So with that being said, Michael, take it away from me.
Hey, everybody. My name is Michael Schimmel, as Milton said, and Eddie, great to be here. Milton, great to be here. Carrie, thank you yet again. Part of this series, as they alluded to, is really geared to helping you guys as members skill up in regards to knowing different pieces of financial education and really getting a grasp on different subjects, And so today we're going to talk about 529. So before we jump in, at Fellows, we are a full holistic financial planning services firm. We work with members day in and day out to help accomplish your goals, look at what's going on in your life, figure out how to get to the most fulfilling, and really the essence of it is, how do we get you to stop worrying about money and live the best version of yourself? And that can take a lot of different forms. And part of taking some of that financial stress away is by savings. And education, as we're going to talk about in regards to the 529s, is really one of the biggest expenses that you'll have in your lifetime, other than purchasing a home. So, a lot of parents, individuals want to be able to save, and 529 is really just where does the number come from? Was it picked out of the sky? No, it's really just about the IRS code, and it's that's what it is. It's Section 5, line 29 of the IRS code that deals with savings for college. And the IRS put this into place a number of years ago to help promote savings for education, because they saw that education was specifically more for, it was becoming more and more expensive, and people were having trouble paying for it. I mean, the amount of loans that the United States Department of Education provides for loans, and we'll talk about that in a bit, it has gone up tremendously. Education's important, and there is no question that people should always pursue, becoming more educated. Just a few more housekeeping notes. We are going to have a Q&A. There is a Q&A chat box. If you have questions, please put it in there. Carrie, Milton, or Eddie will be monitoring that. We'll take some pauses throughout the presentation to answer them if possible. Otherwise, we'll make sure we answer them all before the end of the webinar. So I saw some things popping up in chat and in the Q&A. So please make sure that you post those in there and we'll get the answers. And if we don't know the answers, I'll get back to you at an individual level. So back to kind of education, right? Why do people go to school? Why do they get that higher education? Why do they go to high school? Why do they get a degree? Why do maybe they get an associate's degree, a master's degree, a doctorate degree? Well, this slide shows a really kind of quick, down and dirty reason of why somebody would. If you look at the unemployment rate, as you can see, it goes from 5.5% for people that don't have a diploma, all the way up to 1% of people that have a doctorate in their field of education. If they have a professional degree, law degree, something like that, 1.4. So as you can see, there's a direct correlation to the higher education level you have achieved, the less likely you are going to have trouble finding employment. Doesn't mean the employment that you're going to have is going to make what you maybe envision, but you will not have as much of a trouble getting employment. So just kind of put this in another realm. If you have less than a high school diploma, or we'll just say a high school diploma, you have 4 times greater risk of being unemployed than a person with a doctorate. 25%. So, 400 times, 400%. So, that's pretty impressive. And the next thing, in regards to just why education, that there's a driver of why people keep pursuing education is, hey, well, unemployment, and higher degrees usually equals money. But then the other thing is, hey, 529s were put in place because the average undergrad college tuition has continued to increase way above inflation. So this slide shows that tuition fees, room and board across all institutions is the light blue, public is the yellow, orangish, and then private is the dark blue on top. So you're paying a little above 2 times for a private education. And as you can see, that line from September 2010 to, not September, 2009, 2010 to 2021, which is the most recent Department of Education stats, there's a nice line upwards, and it really hasn't stopped. And just to kind of put this in perspective in regards to, all right, well, they're trending up over the last 10 years. That's nothing new. We've all heard this in regards to what's going on, but let's put it in real money sense, okay? So average college tuition and costs, tuition is just one piece of it. There is tuition and fees, then there's room and board, which can be equal to the tuition and fees in some cases. You've seen books and supplies, computers, then you got to travel, right? Are you traveling to school, from school, holidays? Are you doing trips based on your education preferences? So something that was, eye-opening to me, and we kind of highlighted it the last slide, but private college, not for profit, you're looking at $57,000 versus $27,000 in a 4-year in-state school. Public out-of-state, you still have over a $12,000 difference, and you have a $30,000 difference between public college 4-year and private college. So anybody who's considering a private school, my recommendation just from a finance perspective is make sure that school is geared to your specific desire and interest from a learning perspective, and make sure that they are an expert in that field. People don't go to MIT to become English professors. They go to MIT to become mathematical geniuses. Just kind of a simple example, but it's important to kind of align your money and education with their rate of return that you could possibly get. So let's look at collegiate costs in regards to inflation. So, tuition, yes, it's been going up, but a lot of people say everything's gone up. But you can see in this slide that tuition has gone up, 710% versus other things, medical services. We already talked to, 502%, fruits and vegetables, cereal, airlines, all pale in comparison to tuition prices that have spiked over the period of time. And, this slide was based on data from 86, 87 to 2021 and 2022. So it's pretty impressive in, less than 20 years. We've got significant inflation in college tuition. So what does that leave us to do? Well, we're supposed to be saving as parents, as individuals. And a lot of parents think that, hey, I've done a good job. I'm gonna absorb some of the money. Unfortunately, what they expect and what they actually cover is totally different. And so a lot of times parents and individuals really just underestimate how much they really need to save for higher education expenses. As the main driving force between college savings, nearly 2/3 of parents who expect a child to attend college or savings, they've created a plan, but they normally just kind of do a quick search on Google, Bing, and look at, maybe just the tuition costs and not necessarily the extra ancillary costs that we highlighted 2 slides ago. And so as a result, parents actually overestimate how much they expect to cover. Most parents expect to cover about 30 to 35%, right? Which is basically what this slide says. But what they actually cover is about 10%. So 64%, just kind of some stats of parents, are either savings or planning of savings for college. 36% of parents are not even planning or saving for college. 69% of families will not use retirement savings for college. 21% of families will use some retirement savings for college if needed, which I don't recommend. You can get loans for college. You cannot get loans for retirement. On average, Americans seek to save around $55,000 for their college expenses for their children. On average, they expect that to be equal about 30%, when really it's about 10%. So what do people do when they have this shortfall? Well, I thought I had 30, I really only have 10. Now what do I do? Well, student loan debt, right? That's been in the news a lot lately, student loan forgiveness. Should it be done? Should it not? We're not going to get into that debate. But what I will say is the amount of debt for students that have taken out to get their education done has exponentially increased. Americans owe $1.77 trillion in federal and student and private student loan debt as of 2023, the second quarter, which is up 1.25% from 2022, which was $128 billion. So students and parents have borrowed an estimated $95 billion for the school year of 2021 to 2022. About 50% of this has been unsubsidized loans. 16% were subsidized, 13%, small portion relatively, were grad loans, and 13% were non-federal loans, and 11% were Parent Plus loans, where the parent is signing for the loans. 54% of the class of 2021 bachelor's degree recipients who graduate from 4-year public and private colleges have student loan debt. So 1 in 2, if you're graduating, you have student loan debt. The average debt is $29,000 in federal and private student loan per person. Those who graduate from private nonprofits average a little more with $33,000. So public, $27,000. Private school graduates were more likely to leave school with debt than public school graduates, 55% versus 53%. Overall, the amount of debt that is taken on to get an education has substantially increased over the years. And that's not earth shattering, because if you look at what's happened in regards to the inflation, 700% over the last roughly 20 years, there's a good reason why. So when kids and individuals go to school, you got to make sure there's a return on that investment. And sometimes the majors don't line up with the outflow of money. Sometimes that doesn't matter, but more times than not, it does. So a 529 was designed to be a tax advantage savings vehicle to help individuals combat some of this inflation, help really accumulate more than this 30% people thought they were going to have to help provide for their children's education or individuals' education. So a 529, really is really just a piece in the IRS code that says you can put in money today with very little limits. You can put the money in today and it can grow for 10, 15, 20, 25 years or longer. And as long as that money, so if you start with 10,000 and it's worth 100,000 at the end of, say, 25 years, that 100,000 can be used all tax-free as long as it's used for a qualified education expense. IRS specifically tells you what is a qualified education expense, but in broad strokes, it's tuition, it's anything that runs through the bursar office at the university. If they are living on campus housing and it goes through the bursar's office, they can use the 529 funds for that. So you put in 10,000, you gained 90,000 in investment growth because the money that goes into a 529 is invested. It grows over that 20, 25 years. You do not pay any taxes on any of the gains, and your child's education, has a $100,000 piggy bank to use against it. That was the reasoning and the genesis of why a 529 was created and how it works in the simplest sense. Put money in today, it grows, you can take all the money out later, and it's not taxed. Simple as that. Now, it gets a little more complicated when you're starting to look at different options, but in full, that is how you do it. So a 529 you can also do as a prepaid tuition plan. So Virginia used to have this. I'm located in Virginia. A lot of states used to have prepaid tuition plans. That amount of universities now has drastically shrunk. One of the reasons it has drastically shrunk is because inflation in education cannot be predicted well. And so the universities decided, hey, we're not going to offer this anymore. We're losing too much money in it. So that really leaves you with a 529 college savings plan, which is what I alluded to earlier. You put in money, either lump sum or monthly or quarterly, however you want to fund it. It gets invested inside an investment account. It grows. And as your child or individual, niece, nephew, grandson becomes eligible for schooling, you can use that. The IRS has said, well, guess what? You can use it for private school, grade school. You can use a certain amount for high school, and then college you can use, there's no restrictions. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the ins and the outs of the features of the 529, and we'll go through some of those things. But largely we're going to be focusing on the college savings plans, not the prepaid tuition plans. So what are some of the features of a 529? So first is flexible. So funds can be used various education related expenses, as I alluded to, tuition, room and board, books, even K through 12 education. They can be used for a trade school. They can be used for anything in regards to a certification program that's advanced education. That can all be used within a 529. It has great contribution limits, pretty much non-existent for most people. Most 529s are, 200 some $1,000 in regards to a max contribution that can be made into that, which is more above and beyond that most people will ever make into these on average. But you can put a substantial amount of money into these and you can be rewarded handsomely with the growth over time. 529s have professional management available. So every state almost has a advisor-led 529 position or option, and then also a state-led option. You know, I'm a little partial, but having professional management help with the 529 and picking of the investment options is critical. It's also critical to help, you know, track it, and then also with the disbursement. So having professional management is a plus. You can have a 529 with low maintenance, right? It is pretty easy. You've got minimal effort once it's set up, and then you just kind of put money away. It's kind of like your 401k. If you have one at work, every few weeks you can put money into it, and you just kind of out of mind, out of sight, and it's done. You know, most plans allow this to happen with ease. Control and ownership. So you as a parent or whoever is setting up this 529, can be a grandparent, it can be an aunt and uncle, it can be anybody. You own the 529. The beneficiary you list. Is it a grandchild, a niece, a nephew, a friend, whatever? You can actually do it for anybody. And you always control the money. At no point, even when they're at 18, do you lose control of that money. Now it's meant to be distributed for an education expense. You can change that beneficiary at any time. If you originally put it for Susie decided not to go to school, well, Tommy, you can change the beneficiary to Tommy, and Tommy can use all of the funds that were originally going to be earmarked for Susie. So you've got control and ownership flexibility with that. And with that, you can change your beneficiary at any time. You can change who owns it, which is very helpful. One thing you can't do, by the way, I do have some people ask me this, is can you open a 529 even though we don't have children? You can, but you can't put them as a beneficiary. You have to have a social for them. So you would have to put yourself as a beneficiary, or your spouse, or somebody else. So some of the benefits that we talked about and we've touched on earlier is tax-free growth, right? So earnings on the 529 grow tax-free, and as long as they're used for a qualified education expense, no fees. Federal income tax deduction. Well, sorry, there isn't one. But you know, you're not paying taxes on the disbursement, so there is a little bit of you know, a gain there. State income tax depends on the state. Virginia, there's a state tax write-off up to a certain dollar amount. Same thing with Maryland and DC. If you live in Texas, you're out of luck. No state, you know, tax advantage. So it depends state by state. Gift tax benefits. So you can contribute, you know, a lot of times we hear when we work with grandparents that will do this, they'll put a gift and they'll, you know, you can gift $13,000 a year per person away and not count towards your gift exclusion tax or your annual or your lifetime annual gift exclusion. So what people do is they'll do $13,000 per individual into 529s. You can put a large lump sum gifted into a 529, you know, and this allows for grandparents, individuals to have some control and earmark the money for growth without future tax implications, as long as it's used for education. So it could be a valuable planning strategy overall on gift and estate planning pieces. And the 529 actually has only become, you know, more advantageous throughout the years, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So what do you need to do to open a 529? Well, the account owner is the person opening the account. They're the one who establishes it, manages it. Normally a parent, grandparent, but it really can be anybody. Can even be the student themselves. Like I said earlier, you can open a 529. Hey, I'm gonna have children, but I'm not there yet, or I'm going through an adoption, but not there yet. But you can start this year. Adoptions can take 1 to 3 years. and you put yourself as the beneficial owner and beneficiary, and you start contributing. You can change the beneficiary at any time. The beneficiary is who's going to be using the funds. There's also a successor owner. So my wife and I have 529s. I am the owner. She is the successor owner. So if something happens to me, she automatically steps in and continues owning that 529 and helps manage it for our children. There's authorized users. Those are just kind of, where you can be designated to assume control, authorized, to, make contributions, to make distributions, and, really just help out with the admin of the 529. Financial advisors act sometimes as an authorized user or custodian. In Virginia, American Funds Capital Group is the plan custodian of the 529 program, and that was selected by the state. We have no say in that. And it is also possible to establish a 529 within a trust or part of a legal entity. In such cases, the trustee or the entity can, representative can be helpful and manage the plan in its entirety. But it can be really simple, and it can take about 5 minutes to open a 529 through, most state websites, or working with a financial advisor. It's not a 10-page, account application, things of that nature. But there are some specific steps you need to go through, and then you also have to know what your goals are. And, planning for a 529, different children definitely need to be treated differently in regards to what assets are going in and how they're going to be invested. So we alluded to some of this earlier. Who can contribute? Well, anybody, parents, grandparents, relatives. There's no income restrictions. So doesn't matter if you make $10,000 a year, you make a few $1,000,000 a year. Anybody contribute, and there's no income restrictions. So what are the contribution limits? Well, there is a maximum annual contribution and a lifetime contribution in regards to the 529. Most of those are $232,000 in regards to the maximum annual and lifetime contribution. So how can you contribute? Well, you can contribute by just like you do on your 401k, and have a certain amount of money taken out of your bank account every 2 weeks, once a month, bi-monthly, once a quarter, however you want it to happen, to go into the 529 and be invested. Doing so on a regular and periodic basis definitely helps accumulate money the fastest over time. One, you set up a repeatable and ongoing systematic contribution. People who do those things are more successful in investing. Plus, when you're investing on a regular basis versus once a year, it's called dollar cost averaging, which means sometimes the market's up, sometimes the market's down. But if you're investing the same amount over time, you are going to get a lower basis, which is the overall cost that you purchase things at, because you're buying less when the stock price is up, you're buying more when the stock price is down. Your average basis is going to be lower than just the average price. So contributing on a regular and periodic basis is important to really kind of supercharge your 529 or any investment account, which is one of the reasons why 401k contributions are so powerful over time. Using funds from a 529. So we talked a little bit about what qualified expenses are. You can go to Google and just type in IRS qualified expenses 529. It will bring you directly to the IRS code that labels all of the qualified expenses. I highly recommend that most people just go here if they have a question. Some of the things qualified are tuition, room and board, fees, book supplies, computers, technology, all those things that are required to be at school. Accredited colleges, universities, vocational schools, some international institution, You know, and how do the payments get processed? Well, a lot of times you can take a check and then you need to keep a record of what that distribution was used for. You can also have money go directly to the institution. And at the very least, especially if it's not going to the institution and it's going to you to reimburse anything, keep your receipts and documentation in a folder for this. Another thing in regards to timing and kind of distributions is, you know, just because you're an individual's going to school at 18 or 19 doesn't mean you have to use the money each year, you know, a certain amount each year. You could say, well, the first 3 years, we're not going to have enough money for all 4. So the first 3, we're going to take out loans or we're going to work and we're going to pay for it. And then year 4, we've got enough money built up in the 529 to cover everything. So planning ahead and the timing of the distributions is helpful. And then you always want to make sure that you're truly using it for qualified expenses. If you don't, you are paying regular taxes on there plus a 10% penalty on that. So you just want to be careful on those things. You know, it's not a nice penalty, you know, so just be careful and mindful of that stuff. So state specific, right? We had some people that were in North Carolina, we had some people in Maryland, some in DC and Virginia. I mentioned Texas earlier. Every state has different tax benefits. Some have none, some have very robust tax benefits on the state level to give you an extra push to doing a 529. You know, in state, you know, they might, you know, normally the state deduction is, all right, you put in $6,000, we'll write off 6,000. You know, in DC, I think it's up to 18,000. Maryland, I think it's 15, and Virginia, it's like 12 or something like that. It's not a huge win, but it is something. You know, in regards to ease of access, managing a 529, you don't have to use the 529 that you actually live in from a state perspective. I'm picking on Texas because it's easy. I love Texas, but if you're in Texas and you didn't like the investment options that are inside Texas, or you're not a fan of the fee structure that's inside the state planning in Texas, well, in Texas, there's no benefit, there's no income tax. So you're not saving any money by contributing to a 529 if you're a Texas resident. So being a Texas resident in that case, you would then look outside of Texas for different states' plans. You can go on, you know, Google, there's various other websites that will rank the state programs from a 529 perspective. Virginia is one of the better ones. You know, so we have some clients sometimes that live in Texas, but they'll do a Virginia 529 because American Funds, the 529 company, you know, organization, is better than what's in Texas, and there's no state tax benefit that they're giving up. So be mindful of the state you live in. There's not always a real reason to stay within that state's 529, just, you know, in regards to that. And you can easily access it just the same as if it was your own state's 529. You know, it really is specific on your situation, and you just kind of looking at if there are those options. I mean, the other things that you're going to look at inside your state and then outside of your state are the investment options, right? So do I like the investment options that are in, you know, Florida versus Virginia? You know, who has a better performance record? You know, are there tax benefits? Are there residency requirements? For 529s, there's no residency requirements. Interstate portability. This is more on the prepaid tuition side. You know, there is portability, but you're normally not getting the same value that you would have gotten of by staying in state. You know, so there's some, you know, out of state plans, you know, some of them will have some perks, specialized investment options, additional beneficiary perks, or different rules that suit your needs. So you always want to look at it, but there's not a huge variance in regards to that stuff. but consulting with a financial advisor, as always, can help you make an informed decision based on your specific financial goals and circumstances. So how do we maximize a 529? Well, one, we start early. As soon as the beneficiary is born, has a social security number, you can start one. I recommend doing that. Regular contributions. If you even put $50 today and do that for 18 years, that is much better than waiting till they're 10, because now you can afford $150. You will have more money put in the 529 if you did $50 today to 18 versus starting $150 at 10 through 18. That's the power of compound interest. So it doesn't matter how much, it matters how fast you can start making regular contributions. That's the important one. Take advantage of the tax benefits. If you're in the state and you have that state 529, make sure you are doing your taxes correctly so you get that state tax deduction if there is one. Leverage some employer benefits. A lot of companies, I know government especially, the federal government, like the Senate, they have tuition loan forgiveness or assistance to help pay for loans, but also pay for schooling, period. So make sure you're leveraging those employer benefits. Some employers will actually offer matching contributions to a 529 plan. So you always want to keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Gifts from family and friends. This one's popular. I had a client who gave out little QR codes and it said, in lieu of a birthday present or a toy, please, think about contributing to their 529. A lot of parents don't need or don't want more toys, around the house, and the kids are getting enough of those. And so this is a great way for people to, if they want to spend money, they want to give a gift, this is the gift that keeps on giving. So the other piece is like, once the money's in there, you got to invest strategically. Choose investments within a risk tolerance, right? You can be in the Colorado Rockies going really high, really low when we hit, rough parts of the market, or kind of be like the Blue Ridge Mountains, kind of nice and easy. You got to own and understand your risk tolerance, but also you got to match your risk tolerance with also the purpose and the age of the person that's a beneficiary of the 529. Your risk tolerance might be super conservative, but if you want to grow the most out of this money, you need to be somewhat aggressive over 20 years to make the most of it. One other thing that people just kind of, think about is like, well, I got to do this and I have to, and then 18, college starts, I'm going to stop contributing. Well, no, you can keep contributing. If you were putting, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 a year into this, keep doing it when they're in school. You'll still get some benefits by doing that. So you don't have to stop savings after they've enrolled in school. So there's a little extra flexibility nowadays. And Congress keeps improving the 529s, which is a great thing. It's one of the few things that they do improve. So 529s can now be used to pay down student loans. It's not, you can't use your whole 529 to pay down that, but you can use a portion of the 529 proceeds to pay down your student loans. That has a sliding scale, so you always want to look up the IRS. K through 12, when 529s were introduced, you weren't allowed to use the proceeds from this plan to pay for that education. You can now. Grandparents. So in coming up in 2024, changes to grandparents. So the consolidated, I'll just call it the CCA Act of 2021, which passed in 2022. Basically, when grandparents used to make contributions to a 529, it counted against basically the family and the student in regards to their FAFSA application. Basically said, oh, the child has more assets available to them, and it reduced the student's eligibility for financial aid at the education. Well, that has all changed, and that rule goes into effect live October 1. It just actually went live October 1, 2023, and is being implemented for the 2024-2025 year. So that's something that was, great, because a lot of grandparents wanted to do this, but then they found out it reduced, kind of negatively impacted their ability to get financial aid from the institution. The other option that came out of the Secure Act 2.0 in 2022 was the ability to have some of the money that was unused inside a 529 that has been established to be rolled over into a Roth. And that is a significant improvement and enhancement of a 529. So what are some of the rules around that? Well, a 529 has to be 15 years old. So if you're starting it when they're young, not a big deal. Lifetime maximum is 35,000. That's per person. So if I did it and I had 35,000 left over, I could put 35,000 into my Roth without any tax, with minimal tax implications. We'll say that. My wife could do the same thing. So if you're a married couple, you get $70,000 extra into a Roth, which is very valuable, especially if you're above the Roth IRS contribution limit, right? So that can help quite a bit. That 35,000 then can also be used very well in estate planning. Money's never getting taxed again. Some of the things that, to just kind of think about, the Roth IRA distribution rules apply, right? 59.5, things of that nature. But getting it into the Roth is a huge win, and it was a nice enhancement from the Secure Act 2.0. So grandparents and generational wealth transfer, right? So minimize some tax consequences on a 529. Move assets out of your state today and into your grandchild's beneficiary's name. Create a source of education funding that can go on from generation to generation. So like I said, you can super fund these things and change the beneficiaries at any time. So if they don't use it, they keep going, and you just have different owners, successors, etc. It really can turn into a financial war chest for funding education. A lot of people, at age 72, 73, when you have to start taking RMDs out, you might not use the money. And so, that all money is taxable. And so in certain sections, that money can be transferred and gifted into a 529, and therefore you can take advantage of the minimum distribution and not be taxed on it. So that's a huge win also with the 529s. So a few Q&As on to wrap up. Can you have more than one beneficiary on the account? The answer is no. You can't. You can change the beneficiary at any time, but you can't have more than one beneficiary. You also can't have more than one owner. You can have a successor owner, as we talked about, but you can't. It's not jointly owned. Just like with UTMA accounts, for your children, there's only one parent allowed. What if your child doesn't go to school? Well, they might go to a trade school. They might go to some other form of education. If it's an accredited institution of some sort, you can use it. If they don't, you can change the beneficiary to another child and use the funds for that person. If there's money left over, well, at the end, you can change the beneficiary and it can go to somebody else, or you can utilize the Roth IRA option that we just talked about and move the remaining balance into your Roth IRA. If there is still money left over, I highly recommend just finding another beneficiary versus taking the money and paying the taxes and the penalty on that. Can you change your investment options once you've opened the account? Absolutely. You can change your investment options as much as you can. And I highly recommend that you look at it on a yearly basis so you can track the risk and the amount of risk that you're taking versus the amount of reward that you'll get by taking a more aggressive stance in your investment portfolios. What if the beneficiary receives a scholarship? Well, it's just the same as not needing the money. You just, it is what it is, and you need to find a different beneficiary, roll the money into a Roth IRA, use it for yourself, There's a lot of flexibility into kind of having it go on for longer, but you don't get an automatic pass. Oh, you get this money out for free. No, you'll still have to pay taxes. So in short, that's what we got today on 529s. We went through a lot of information over the last 45 minutes. We're here to help you do that. My direct number is, my work cell is this number, 571-205-1515. You can always email United States Senate Federal Credit Union or go to their website. We're happy to do that. I know we have a few questions in the chat box and the Q&A, so I will let the team start that and we'll try to answer those right now.
Michael, thank you very much for all the information. Great content. And of course, like you were saying, this is very important to prepare for the future, but you also got to be mindful how you're going to move your money around. So thank you very much for giving us that information. Like you're saying, we're going to try to tackle all questions. So that with that being said, let's get it started. So the first question that I have on my end is, I'm particularly interested to know about 529 plans for high school tuition. Does it work the same way as college for college 529 plans? If not, what's the difference?
I'm just reading it. Works the exact same way. So there are some limits in regards to how much you can use for high school. So you want to, consult the IRS. I don't remember them offhand, but you can use the 529 for high school tuition. It works the exact same way. If you put in money when they're born, and now it's worth X, well, you can use that money for high school up to, the IRS limits per high school.
Perfect.
But it works the same.
Awesome. So just to emphasize, it works the same high school tuition as well as college tuition. I know you answered this one on your presentation, but we just want to emphasize it. What else besides tuition can 529 plans pay for? Travel, books, other school fees, room and board?
Yeah, so travel, if it's required by the school, maybe. To books, textbooks, yes. Room and board, if it's going through the bursar office. If it's an apartment off campus, that's a gray area. Some people say yes, some people don't. I say no. But I recommend just literally Googling IRS qualified 529 expenses. It'll bring you up to the IRS code, and then you can just read the list of what they have deemed a qualified expense.
All right, perfect. Another question that we have from the attendant is, I have 529s for both of my children with the same state of Virginia. Is it accurate that both parents are able to open separate 529 accounts for each child? In other words, if I have two children, you could open a total of 4 529s for, say, like
Yep.
Virginia? What would be the maximum savings you could achieve?
So that answer is correct. So each parent can open a 529 for each child. So my wife and I have 3 children. We can have 6 529s. There used to be more of a reason to do that, and then state legislators started, catching on, where they just then made the tax deduction a certain dollar amount, so people didn't have to have 6 individual accounts for 3 kids to take advantage to maximize the state. But it depends on what state you're in. So sometimes, in Virginia, that's exactly how it used to be, and I believe still is. In DC, it's not like that anymore. So it depends on the state. In this case, for this gentleman who asked, yes, for 4 accounts, and you get, it used to be 2,500. I think it's 3,500 per account per child. So,
all right, perfect. Is the only tax benefit of a 529 plan the fact that the interest the account generates can be spent tax-free, or can we also fund the plan with pre-tax money so that no taxes are paid on the money in the fund, whether at the front end or the back end?
529s cannot be funded with pre-tax dollars.
Now,
it's always after tax dollars.
Okay, perfect. Do we have to go through a financial advisor to open a 529 plan, or can they just walk into the credit union and someone there can help set up the account for them?
So the credit union can't open a 529 for for you. An advisor has to open a 529. Or you can go to the Virginia 529, and there's a non-advisor led program that you can navigate and do it yourself. So you kind of have a choice. Do you want a financial professional helping you out, walking you through, you know, or do you want to kind of cut your chops on it yourself?
I really like this information. It's very, you know, informative. And, you know, I think everybody's getting, you know, more knowledge than we already had before the presentation. Can a parent and a grandparent each have a 529 plan on the same child? Who gets the state tax deduction, the owner or the contributor?
Yeah, both can have a 529 for the same beneficiary. The owner is the person that gets the state deduction. So if a parent and a grandparent both have their own account, well, the parent gets their tax deduction and the grandparent gets their tax deduction for the amounts that they put in, if there is one.
Can a child be the beneficiary for more than one 529?
Yes, but you can't have the same owner. I mean, you can have the same owner and beneficiary. It just really doesn't make much sense to have it set up that way. So, but yes, you can, if you have a family with, you know, 7 sets of aunts and uncles, and they all want, and there's one grandchild, and they all want to have a 529 for that one grandchild, yes, that's perfectly fine.
As long as they're different owners, like you're saying, correct?
Yes. I mean, it's not going to hurt, but there's no reason. You can only have one account with one owner and one beneficiary. So you can have, the beneficiary can always be the same, you know, whoever they want to be, but the account owner has to be different.
Perfect. Carrie, do you want to give a shout at the Q&A questions?
Oh, you could go ahead. I know it's hard in the chat, but in the Q&A, okay, so using the Q&A tool, I'll go to those ones. To your knowledge, has the IRS or the several states, specifically Virginia, posted any information or rules, instructions for the rollover of 529s and Roth IRAs? To Roth.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the Secure Act 2.0. So, I mean, you can Google that and type in Roth. You know, there's multiple articles out there that will also discuss it. There are some, you know, specific rules around it because you want to be careful and be able to document it. But yes, there is information. It's federal in regards to, so it's not state specific in regards to rollover of 529s to a Roth IRA.
So do you know if the 529 rollover to Roth IRA is available for tax year 2023?
I don't know offhand. I would say to check with your tax advisor. I know it's been signed into law. I don't know when it goes into effect offhand.
Do you know where the Form 1040, the form itself or a schedule, this type of rollover would be reported?
Don't know. I would check with your tax advisor. But yes, it's similar to the 1099-Q. I believe you will get, if you do this, you will get a 1099-Q, if memory serves me correctly.
Will, is it reportable by the 529 account owner or the beneficiary?
Owner. It's the owner that's doing this. It's the owner's accounts.
Will the financial institution holding the 529 account issue some type of informational form similar to a 1099-Q, for example, to the—
Yeah, you will get,
owner?
yeah, not to the beneficiary, to the owner.
Okay, thank you. And can parents who are divorced contribute to the 529 separately?
Yeah, absolutely. So you just, you know, one of the parents could open it, and then both parents can make contributions into that one, or in that case, I would recommend both parents open a 529, be the separate owners. Each one of them is a different owner, and the beneficiary is the same child.
What happens with the state tax benefits claimed realized at the time of contributions if the 529 account isn't used for qualified education? or if it's rolled over to a Roth IRA?
The tax benefits are only done on contributions of the year that it's done. So they have to be, the 529s have to be in existence for over 15 years. So they're not going to come back and claw that over. You know, if you did, you know, $3,000 a year, you know, times 15, that's 45,000, and you only use 10 for education. So yes, you could move the 35 back. Are they going to claw the 35,000 that you know, I think it's 3,000 over 15. Yeah. I mean, they're not going to claw back the tax that you used. No.
Okay, that's the same with, for the next question, will the states try to recapture or claw back those benefits?
Right now they're not. Right now it's a federal piece, and the states have no provision to claw anything back if it's rolled over into a Roth.
So is this correct? A rollover to a Roth IRA is tax-free to the owner if it's rolled over to the owner's Roth IRA?
Largely, yes. There's some specifics in the IRS code that was implemented that you need to be aware of, but yes.
I think that's all from the Q&A.
Yeah, I think so too. We had great questions, very specific questions. So we're so happy that everybody was able to engage with us. As usual, like Milton referred at the beginning, our commitment is to read each of your questions. So the fact that you send, you know, very specific questions makes us happy, because that means that you're learning and you're curious about this topic, just as we are curious, you know, for you to learn as well. With that being said, I know Carrie, Milton, I don't have any last words. Michael, you did an amazing job. Thank you very much for always helping us with these presentations as well.
No, my pleasure. No, I'm great. I appreciate everybody's time today. If there's additional questions, please utilize our information through the website, United States Senate Federal Credit Union. My contact information is there. Milton, Eddie, Carrie, thank you very much for the opportunity, and look forward to speaking again.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone again. And we look forward to seeing you again on another webinar here at the Credit Union. Invite you all to our next webinar. Next Wednesday webinar is going to be all about getting digital with the United States Senate Federal Credit Union, and we're going to go back to our normal time, to 6 p.m. So once again, Michael, thank you so much, and the rest of the panel, you'll have a wonderful rest of your day now. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.